Welcome to Heroes for Hope, where trauma is a superpower. On today's episode, Joe and I are going to be diving deep into the resilience pool with our guest, Tim DeGrano. And I want to say happy Groundhog Day today. We got 6 more weeks of winter, and my guest, Tim DeGrano, just got back from Hawaii. So maybe we'll hear a little about that. We chop it up with Tim. We're having Tim here. We're going to talk about this, his experience today, because our stories have a wisdom that can help people we serve and protect. We make their struggle our own, so we have to tell our stories to create a shared perspective. So my friend Tim DeGrano is an Army veteran and a retired cop. Tim DeGrano here with me. He brought his family to the Country Music Festival in Las Vegas on October 1st, 2017, where, Tim, you found yourself in the middle of a mass shooting that killed 60 and wounded 413. Today, Tim will tell us about the incident and how he turned his trauma into superpower. Welcome to Heroes for Hope, Tim.
Thank you for having me.
So why don't you just tell us a little bit about that day, where your life was then, and what led up to it, and your state of mind. And from there, we'll see how you were able to turn that trauma into your superpower and what you're doing with that today.
Well, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the opportunity, to explain things. I think if we go back, I retired from the police department in 2015. And I had been doing numerous other things, working odd jobs for different people, a few security gigs. And I was coaching baseball, which, took a lot of, it was stressful in a completely different way, right? So you're working with kids, that's always stressful. Teenage boys, extremely stressful. But they had fun, and I found a way to have fun with them. And then you roll around to 2017. We'd been going to Vegas with the same group of folks for probably, 3-4 years, maybe a little more. Never at the same time of year, but typically twice a year. That year in 2017, our friends had mentioned, hey, there's a 3-day concert. It was called the Harvest, the Route 91 concert. And they wanted to know if we wanted to go. And we said, yeah. So we did. So in our group, it was myself, my wife, my 2 kids, my son, my daughter, both adults, and my mom, 75-year-old mom. She decided she wanted to go have some fun. I think it was because it was Vegas, probably. Not so much it was a country concert. So it's a 3-day concert. Like I said, we were there for the 3 days. We got there on Thursday. The concert started on Friday. Everything was going great. We ended up going on the last day, which was October 1st. And we decided we were going to try and cut out a little early after the headliner, which was the main act was Jason Aldean, because we'd seen him before and we wanted to get maybe a dinner. My mom had been with us, again, 75 years old. She'd been with us right up by the stage Friday and Saturday night, and she had a great time. A lot of great people, a lot of patriotic people. Everybody was just enjoying it. Come Sunday, we decided not to go towards the stage so that we could beat the crowd out of there after the first act. So we found a bleacher system, which was, probably about, 100 yards away from the main stage to the rear. And to set it right, I'm sure you've seen videos. There's a documentary that's running right now that's on Netflix about the shooting and people's experiences. This bleacher system was, again, about 100 yards back. And we took up post there. We sat there. We listened to all the music and walked around, only to come back to the bleacher system. To move forward, once the Jason Aldean started, I heard a single round. Now I'm at the top of the bleachers, again, with my family. And then we had 6 or 7 other folks that we travel with. They were there as well. Their kids were with them, adults. That day, my mom decided that Friday and Saturday was enough for her. She's going to hang back. So she stayed at the hotel, which was ended up in hindsight, that was an absolutely outstanding idea. First round goes off. I recognized it as a report from it was gunfire for sure. My friend that we were traveling with, also an Army veteran, we both looked at each other, and there was a little bit of a pause. It was just a single shot, and then there was another one, and that kind of confirmed it. A few seconds later, it was just total automatic weapon fire. Now, because of the way the venue was set up, it sounded like it was inside the venue. And in my mind, I thought there were multiple shooters for sure. My mind was also racing because of the type of event. You've got the American flag flying everywhere and country music. And, it just seemed like, wow, what a target that would have been. So that's where my mindset was. Not a lot of room for cover, certainly not concealment. But I decided to do what I could, and I needed to find out where the threat was coming from. So I yelled for everybody to get down as low as they could on the bleacher system, which they did right away. No questions asked. I made it down to the bottom of the bleacher system, and there was a lull in the gunfire. So in my mind, I'm thinking that's a reload. So I took that opportunity to yell to my son, as soon as I give you the okay, take off. Get behind the bleachers. Go. Take them with you. Here's where it gets a little crazy, and what I don't have as much trouble with it now. I've kind of worked things through. I don't know why I did it, but I made the decision right then and there that I wasn't going to go with the fam. I trusted my son. I trusted the people we were with, and I just laid it all out, and I let that happen. I gave him the thumbs up when I thought it was clear enough, and he took off and took everybody with him. They went behind the bleacher system, and that was the last I saw of them for a while. I made it down to the end of the bleacher system, like I said, and they had these, I don't know, they look like those barriers that they put on the freeway when they want you to go to another lane, a single lane, traffic control kind of a device. I got behind that. It was plastic, but I figured at least it's a bit of a concealment. And as I crawled to the edge of it, the gunfire had started up again. Didn't sound close, but it sounded like it still was in the venue. And I could see people, having been a cop for, 27 years, had some military training and a lot of gunfire, but I've never seen panic like that before in my life, ever. It was total pandemonium. People actually at full speed running into each other and knocking each other down. There was a bit of a void between my location and a speaker system, and then the front of the stage and the stage itself. Open area. When I got to the end of the bleacher system, down on the ground level, there was another fella there. It was just a very strange thing. He looked at me and he said, "What's the plan?" Now, I'm not in uniform. I'm wearing a t-shirt and shorts. I thought that was odd for a split second. What's the plan? Why are you asking me, brother? I'm just trying to survive here. So I said, well, we have to help those people, because we could see there was already people down. And we did. We crawled over where we could to see if we could help folks. Some people had just been knocked down. Some were in complete shock, frozen.
Right.
We got them up, and helped them what we could and told them where to go. My only thing that I knew was to go behind the bleacher system. At least that was cover. I didn't know how you would exit. I didn't find that out until later. Did you want me to go on? Or?
Oh, Tim, you're telling us so well, so thank you.
We had to crawl. They had like an AstroTurf kind of a thing out in this void. So we had to crawl through there. The first people that I remember seeing, they were sitting in these, not lounge chairs, but the little chairs you take down at the beach, little folding chairs. But they had those little tiny matching canopies. on him, the kind that have a little drink rest and that kind of a deal. But I could see a hand from my vantage point on the arm. So I looked at the guy that was crawling around with me and I said, we got to get to them. And he says, it doesn't look good. It didn't. I figured this guy had been, or whoever it was, had been hit. But as we got closer, I could see that it was a woman and a man, probably in their 70s. They were frozen, both of them, completely frozen, eyes open, staring straight ahead, no movement. But I could see he was breathing. So I grabbed his hand and he didn't jump. He didn't, pull away. He didn't do anything. He just turned his head and looked at me. And I said, you've got to get out of here. So we helped them to their feet and directed them behind the bleachers, which now is about maybe 10, 15 yards behind us. And they did. They ran as best they could together, hand in hand, and they disappeared behind the bleachers. And we kept going. Everywhere we went, we'd find either somebody that was DOA or somebody that had been injured, not necessarily shot, but, a lot of twisted ankles, a lot of people falling. There's still at this time people running around. Now, in my mind, the gunfire is still going on. It's still there, very loud. People screaming, people it's complete pandemonium. And the thought crossed my mind that what are you going to do if you do come across a shooter? And I didn't know. I had no idea. You train, but when that happens, what do you do? Yeah. So, like I said, we did what we could for who we could. As we got a little closer, I remember looking up and I saw the most bizarre thing. It was an elevated platform. It was basically a dance floor, but elevated. And people had headphones on. There was a disco ball, and there were some people still dancing amongst all this craziness. And for a split second, I thought, what is going on? It confused me. It was bizarre. It was surreal. I later found out that is something called a silent disco, wherein I guess you wear your headphones and you have a certain type of music playing, and then the person you're dancing with is actually dancing to a different type of music. So they would have never heard it. So unless they looked down, they probably had no idea what was going on. So we passed that. This guy I was with, he took all of the little stuff you could buy, your t-shirts, your hats, beers, whatever. They were on these platforms, but they were on casters. I hadn't noticed that. But he grabbed one and he started pushing it so that we would be behind it. We got to another location and we saw a young gal, probably in her early 20s. She had a little frilly skirt on, her cowboy boots, and she was all done up for the concert. And I could see she was bleeding from her leg, her right upper leg. And so as we got closer, I saw that she had, what appeared was a bullet wound in her upper thigh. So I thought, well, that's close enough, to arteries. So we got to do something. So as we were trying to find out how to, I was going to take my t-shirt off and apply pressure and do everything you're taught and whatever. But at that split second, here comes these two guys, no shirts on, completely asleep, man. These dudes are tatted, young guys. And this guy comes sliding into our location like he's going into second base. He pops up, and before I could put the t-shirt down, I'm looking at him, and he sticks his finger right in the hole of that wound. Right in the hole. I'd never seen anything like that. I later found out that is one way that if it is an arterial bleed, that's the best way to stop it. So you learn something, right? I learned something that day. But, long story short, I saw a lot of heroics there that day. But having said all that, I was in there for about 45 minutes. I got separated from that other guy I was with. Never saw him again. Don't know who he was. I don't know if he was law enforcement or prior military, or I have no idea. He just had that presence about him. So I think that's probably what the case was. I left there, tried to get cell service. I could not. I made it behind the venue, and it was actually Hooters. of all things, was behind the venue. And I made it to the back of Hooters where they have their big dumpsters, and I saw the door open up. So I thought I'm going to try and make it in there because I had to clear some open ground in the parking lot. So before I did that, I heard this lady come out of the front of the casino, and she's yelling, "There's a shooter in the casino. There's a shooter in the casino." Well, so that threw all the plans off. That was okay. So now I got to find some good cover. Well, there was none. I could see traffic. There's cars going by, people running, yelling. I could hear sirens coming from all over. I had passed a bunch of coppers. I didn't see any coppers when I was in the venue, by the way. None, not a one. It wasn't until later that I found out, well, all of the craziness was actually out on the strip. And I don't think they knew about too many of the people that were inside the venue. So I made it to the front of Hooters. I ran to behind the MGM parking garage, which is a multi-tiered structure. And as I'm crossing the street, it's one of those sketchy streets off the strip. I'm trying to get, cell service. I can't get anything. I get about another 100 feet and my phone rings. I look at it and I'm hoping that it's my son or my wife or somebody. And it ends up being a guy that we work with, Vinny Marchetti. He'd been watching the news. Now it's all over the news. He saw it. They knew I was going, right, to this concert. And the first thing he says is, "Tim, are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah." And so I wanted to blurt out anything I could right away because I didn't know what was going to happen. For some crazy reason, I told him what I was wearing, the street that I was on, and that my family, I was not with them. I think they made it out, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And Vince says, "I'll take care of it. I'll let people know." I said, "All right." And that was it. The next call I got, thank God, was from my son. "Dad, we're all okay. We can't get across the strip, but we're at," and he named the casino. I can't remember what it was, but it was down by where we were staying, pretty far, but they made it. So I decided, okay, I'm going to cross the street and just keep going until I can get down to where I think we stay. So as I'm walking, I see these two dudes at this like little AM/PM. And this street is one of those streets that has all the motels that are all defunct, right? They're all boarded up and
The old
strip. And this guy comes over. He's got his t-shirt on, cut off t-shirt, and he's all tatted up, and he's just a total vato, man. And this guy comes half into the street towards me, and I'm like, "You got to be kidding! Does this never end? It just keeps getting better."
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, well, here we go. Right? We're gonna do this. And he walks up. He gets about 10 feet from me, and he goes, "Have you been shot?" I look at him and I go, "No." He goes, "Dude," and he pointed to my knee. Well, I must have gone over some broken glass or something crawling. I don't know, but it was bleeding pretty good.
Yeah.
It was, and I never felt it. So he said, so he took his t-shirt off and he gave it to me. So I wiped what I could, and he says, "I'm going to get you some water." Now, this guy's got the gang tattoos and all this other stuff. So that guy was probably a piece of shit.
Yeah.
But that night,
Amen.
he wasn't.
Amen. Yeah.
He brought me back 2 bottles of water, probably swiped them, but I don't care. And off I went. And I was able to reunite with the family. A security guard at one of the casinos saw them, had been watching the news, knew what was going on, and let him in a back door.
Yeah.
So he took care of him. But it's a crazy, crazy, crazy thing.
Tim, and you tell it so well. Full disclosure, I've heard you talk about this before. Tim was invited shortly thereafter to talk about his experience with our entire department in a big auditorium full of people. And there's so many lessons in this, and there are some notes that I was taking as we were talking. A couple things, just to kind of frame it up for people who aren't as familiar as this is probably in your mind. This happened relatively quickly, but from the first shot that you heard till when you were just like, hey, you're kind of doing your self-care, how long do you think that was?
I know I was in there for 45 minutes because I think it was my son that told me. That's how long, I had been there. Well, plus the walk back another,
Yeah.
15 minutes or whatever. So maybe not that long. But I know that I thought the gunfire was continuous until right before I left the venue. After the fact, I found out that wasn't the case. It was minutes, not a half an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in my mind, I was still hearing it while I was in there, and doing things to avoid getting hit. When in actuality, it was done.
Yeah,
the gunfire was over.
It was over. You talked about this. This stood out from the last engagement about the type of people who run towards gunfire, and you were able to identify that, man, this is probably a young veteran. This guy's probably an off-duty first responder, and it was in these moments of crisis, people who their natural inclination to help other people just comes out. Almost, you have no choice.
No, that's absolutely true. I think we all know it, just based on the line of work, or military veterans. They know, but until you see it, or until you experience it, a veteran who experiences something non-combat related after they're out, it kind of kicks in, right? A funny thing, that same brother of ours that we worked with, Vinny, I don't remember if it was a group of people that we were talking to, or somebody had asked me, why do you think, how could you have, they didn't ask it in a way like, geez, what's the matter with you leaving your family, but that is what I struggled with, afterwards. And sometimes I still have to get it right in my mind, because I do feel that, you raise your kids. I've been married to my wife for 35 years, high school sweethearts. And that day I just put all my trust in my son, and I let him take it. I probably should have been the one to make sure that they got out of there.
Can we talk about your son a little bit?
Yeah. Well, let me just finish this thought though. With Vinny, he, Vince, our friend Vince,
long time friend.
Yeah. He doesn't have much to say conversationally, but when he does, it's poetic. It's makes you scratch your head. I said, I don't know why I did it. And he goes, that's because you got a fucked up sense of duty. And I took that to heart.
Yeah. And we pass that on to future generations, huh?
We try to. Right? Yeah. Yeah.
I want to revisit a couple of things, but your son was there with you. Your son, where was he in his life then, and where is he today?
So my son had, 2017, he had just graduated college. There was my friend Bob, who was with us. His son was also there. He's 2 years younger than my son, still in college, and he wanted to be a cop. That was all he's ever wanted to do. He currently is now a police officer in Alameda, and Nico is in San Leandro, my son. So that's what they did. So my son went into the Army. He went into the National Guard. He's a combat medic.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know if it's a natural thing. That's certainly not what I wanted for him. That's not what we paid all the money to go to college for. We wanted him to do something, tried to push him towards the fire department. Because firefighters, they wave at firefighters with all five fingers, right? And so that's what I wanted for him. But no, he didn't want that.
Joe, what do you think about that? Because Joe has some law enforcement, CAT, was a combat medic in Iraq. What do you think?
I'm sitting here listening, and there is no more noble calling, in my opinion, than being a medic. It doesn't matter if you're a fire department medic, if you're a medic on a SWAT team or a tactical team, or, obviously in the military. There's, in my opinion, this is just my humble opinion, but I believe that there's a higher calling than others to do, because you're multifaceted, especially in the military. I went into combat as a medic, and part of my job was a sniper, part was medic. So I had, two distinctive professions there to work on. And I congratulate your son and, thank him for his service for one thing, but it's not for everybody. That's you could see all the TV shows. I mean, one of the biggest influences I had growing up was the show Emergency. Back in the '70s. Squad 51.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
KMG 365.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exactly. And then MASH came out, and I was like, yeah, okay, that's what I want to do. So I've gotten to have a taste of all of it, from a law enforcement background, the military background, the EMS background, the nursing background, and I've seen trauma from all different spectrums combined. My question to you is, what did you do in the military before becoming a police officer, or were you a police officer and went to National Guard? What was the relationship between the two?
Well, I knew college wasn't going to be for me. I actually went to Hawaii to a little school called Chaminade University. It was the only one I could get into. And I was there for a whole 2.5 weeks before I called home and said, hey, I don't think this is for me. So I came back, saw the recruiter, and took the ASVAB and
Right.
went through the whole thing. And the guy says, okay, other than being a nuclear physicist, you can do anything that you want. So I said, oh, okay, that infantry thing looks really cool. So that guy looked at me. I remember his name was Sergeant Cook, Korean guy. And he says, no, did you hear what I said? I said, you can do anything you want. I said, yeah, but that looks really cool. Because at the time they used to put on a VHS, and remember they show you all the MOSs and all that. So that's what I went with. So off I went to Fort Benning, Harmony Church. And that was in '85. And when I got out, I was stationed in Germany with the 3rd Infantry. And
Rock of the Marne, baby. Rock of the Marne.
Yeah, that's right. Rock of the Marne, baby. When I got out, I de-roast out of Fort Bragg. And when I was at the not the reception center, but the place where they do all your paperwork and send you out and whatever they call that, it was a big office, and I was waiting to get the last my orders and my flight stuff so I could go home. And I'm sitting there, and there's this huge bulletin board of business cards, right, for job opportunities. And one of them out of thousands stood out to me, and I don't know what it was. I think it was the gold leaf that was on a little part of it. So I went up to look at it, and I'll be damned, it was from the CHP. And so I took that card, and I came back, and long story short, I tested with all kinds of people, CHP, LASO, Oakland, Alameda, San Leandro, and San Leandro came through. So there I stayed for 27 years.
It's a good place. San Leandro is right next to East Oakland. It once boasted being the 5th most diverse city in the United States. So we had some real unique challenges, and we really only were able to hire the best police officers. Thank you very much. And so we have a lot to say about that in our careers. Both of us had some real colorful careers, and so a couple things.
I'm sorry, Joe. Did that answer your questions?
Yeah. What I was curious about is how many line of duty shootings were you involved in over your career?
Where I was the shooter?
Yeah.
None.
Okay.
None.
No combat involvement?
No combat involvement. I fell off of the Bradley, I think, once, but other than that.
Well, hey, I mean, that's,
it happens.
Hey, it happens, man. No, the reason I bring that up was because that Vegas shooting was your baptism by fire. That is a combat environment. That is an ambush. You were technically ambushed, and that's exactly what the hell happens in combat. All the emotions that you go through, the chaos and all that shit, that is combat in a nutshell right there. It just so happens that it was in a civilian venue, a concert where there's not supposed to be those types of problems. And it's to be trained for it and to do it are two different things. I mean, you can go through all the training and have that mindset. When this happens, I'm going to act this way. I'm going to respond because of my training. And 9 times out of 10, yes, that does happen because your muscle memory kicks in and you just run through the motions and take care of business. But there's always that 1% that has that split second that thinks, what the fuck is happening? And those are the people that don't make it.
Yeah, I could see. Yeah. Well, I saw it.
Yeah,
I want
I mean,
to revisit that. I've taken some notes here. Is that in law enforcement, we talk about condition white and condition yellow, orange. I think it goes up to black. So condition white is that your mind is some other place, and so you were already in a condition yellow because you already recognize this as a possible hostile environment or a target-rich environment for some terrorists. And sadly enough, I think last year they determined they did not know this person's motive either, which was a bit odd. And so you saw how some people who were in condition white reacted and how people who were already in condition orange kind of scanning, a relaxed state of awareness, already scanning for possible threats. That's something that can kind of hurt us and benefit us. Oftentimes it turns into hyper vigilance, which can really burn you out. Some of the things that I kind of want to go a little bit deeper into based upon that is after this, because Joe and I went through a warrior path, and which is a great program. And what we look at is that post-traumatic growth is that we look at the incidents that the traumas that we've had to endure, and we don't let them define us. We grow from them, become wiser. So it's a step beyond post-traumatic stress disorder, not treating it like a disease or post-traumatic stress incident where the officer's not or the subject's not expected to come back or being treated for it. But this is really looking how rich this incident can make you as an individual, and how you can use it to pass on and help other people. So question's twofold. Is that was this post-traumatic growth for you to where you became a better person? Was there somebody who you could say that was my champion, that person was on my side through this whole thing, or that person really hurt me through my recovery and it probably was holding me back?
Boy, you asked tough questions.
Well, that was a tough week, right,
Yeah.
Joe? Path. I mean, so maybe we're taking our PhD in this and beating Tim over the head.
No, but the cool thing of it was, I mean, it was life, and it's all perspective and what the hell you do with it.
Yeah.
I would not take a moment from my experiences because it shaped who I am now. And I'm a much more rounded individual, not just like the Pillsbury Doughboy, but emotionally and mentally and psychologically rounded. So yeah, I embrace it.
No, there's no doubt that I saw people, not literally, but almost, but not literally that night. But I've seen it before too. Right, as a cop, you see all kinds of horrendous things and the evil things that people do to each other, and you see all kinds of things, and where people just want to curl up in the fetal position and hide their face. If I can't see you, you can't see me, type of a thing, right? Like a baby, because they're panicked, they're shocked, they're ill prepared. There's been no training, and they don't have the drive to try and make that situation better for themselves. And I saw that night. It's no fault on them. Nobody should ever have to go through that, ever. But it did bring something to my mind that I thought about and I still think about. And I talk about with other officers and, younger officers. I talk about it with my son. All the military training I had, all of the training that I received as law enforcement, you fellas know. I mean, that it's like every other month there's something new they want to teach you, or something that you've learned and you've put into practice for 10 years, and now they want to change it. One thing that comes to mind is the carotid, right? Mm-hmm. What a great tool. And they get rid of it. So now you got to do something else, right? All that training that I received, not once, and I'm specifically talking about the scenario-based training, mm-hmm. right? Not once was my family with me. Not once. Didn't even think about that. I mean, we used to have little things when my kids were little. We had a little buzzword that I would say, if I saw something that wasn't right and I wanted them to do something. And I remember telling my kids, hey, it's just like the Nike slogan, right?
Just do it.
Just do it. If I tell you to do something, just do it. Because that second you take may end up badly. So just do what dad tells you and you'll be all right. And my kids followed that. But again, the training we receive, your family's never with you. I mean, that's like another, you've got 100-pound ruck on and now you're going to add another 100, right? As you're moving. So in the back of my mind, maybe that's why I wanted to relinquish my responsibility to my son. Had my son been younger, or specifics were changed, or the dynamics were changed, I probably would have left for sure. But I really trusted him in what he was going to do. And afterwards, I forgot to mention, there's a great lady out there. She's a psychiatrist, and cop family. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah,
Beth Danzy.
Yeah, Beth Danzy. She's fantastic.
Lifesaver.
I know officers that are still visit her, not regularly, but every once in a while, because she's so good. She comes from a law enforcement background. Her husband, her sons, I think her son-in-law, they all were coppers or are coppers. But when this incident occurred, at the end of it, I talked to the then chief. He had called to ask how I was, and he said, hey, have you talked to anybody? And I hadn't even thought about it. But for my family, I thought we should. Because especially my daughter and my wife, they took it, expectedly so. They took it really hard. To this day, they're still a little jumpy for loud noises and things like that. And I recognize that, and they do too. So Beth actually came out to the house, and the whole group of us that were there, my family, our friend's family, all of our friends, everybody that was there that day, she sat down with us for an hour, almost 2 hours, and talked us all through it. And each and every person that I talked to afterwards in that group said they felt much better about it. Much better.
We arrived on Beth, and the police culture probably around 2010, I would say, is that we got better in dealing with the mental health of our officers, which bypassed our generation. By the time this came around, I was already a sergeant, but I bought into it. I was really into mental health. I saw that my group around me, my peer group around me, wasn't doing so well. And so I came into Beth Danzy because we had to talk to her after every critical incident. I was involved in several. And so she kind of got to know me, and I kind of arrived the same way, is that, come 50 years old, I didn't feel like I was the best version of myself. And so Beth and I, my wife Beth and I, talked to Beth Danzy too. And she's just a wonderful person. And I can't say enough about how many lives she has helped.
Oh yeah.
She, just a wonderful, wonderful involvement she has with police officers. Do you still talk to any other people who were there aside from your friends? Is there any social group that's kind of
no? My daughter, about maybe 2 months, a month, 2 months after this incident, my wife and I, we don't do Facebook. I don't do Instagram and all the other ones. We just don't do it. If I want to talk to you, I'll pick up the phone and I'll call you, or I'll text you, and that's about the extent of what I do. But somebody posted on Facebook, I think it was, and she sent it to me. She says, "Dad, check this out. There was a couple of ladies that were sitting next to me on the bleacher system. They were by themselves, and they left with our family. When I told them to get down, they got down, and they left with them. I was wearing a T-shirt that day that my daughter had bought me, and I didn't even remember, because it's a black T-shirt, but the back of it is where the imprint is. So I didn't even think of it. And what it says on the back is something to the effect, my time in uniform is over, but my watch never ends.
Yeah, that's a good one.
About 3 minutes before the gunfire erupted, this woman took a picture of it because I was standing up. And she said, "I thought this was the coolest T-shirt. And this guy got us out of there. And now I really think it's the coolest T-shirt." And it blew me away. We don't know who they were. I mean, I think my daughter, she got involved she's down south, either in Huntington Beach or Long Beach. There's a survivors group. They're all over.
Right.
But there was a survivors group, and she went and she said she felt a lot better. Got to talk out.
Yeah.
Because there's a million stories from that night. Right. Just a million stories of what occurred that night.
You had to talk about this stuff. So the whole concept of Heroes for Hope, it's about turning your trauma into your superpower. So what are you doing today with it?
So I think I'm a little different, as you well know.
It's okay. It's good different.
To the point where maybe when I'm 65, 70, my head will just explode. I don't know. I don't have sleepless nights. I never really have. When my head hits the pillow, I go to sleep, right? It's time to go night-night. But there are things that I think about, and I think it's a natural thing that all of the horror that we've seen or been involved in, you can't unsee, you can't undo, right? It's part of you. Now, I had this long conversation with my son about it as he was entering this field of work, and I told him it can either define you or it's just part of what you have.
Yeah.
You got to learn to deal with it. And the way I dealt with it was I had a field training officer who retired like 2 years after I started. And he was one of my heroes, just a great Pat Erskine. They used to call him the cowboy. Pat, he's one of those guys that started law enforcement in like 66, 67, something like that. He'd seen it all. He'd seen all the changes, but he was a great guy with young cops. He taught. He was a little stern, like he should have been. But he told me, he says, don't surround yourself off duty with other cops exclusively.
Right.
Surround yourself with other people, So fortunately enough for me, I was involved in other things like this, my kids' school and other things. So, I mean, I have friends that are, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, the accountant, so the stories are never all about horror and they never have been. So I think that helped me.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that I feel, some people go to the gym, I try and go to the gym 4 days a week. Some people have to go to the gym for that reason, right? Because that's a stress reliever, and that's great. Yoga, you had mentioned yoga to me before, right? That's great. Some people go to the firing range. I have a friend that goes to the archery range, right? That's good. That's his focus, right? That's what he does: golf, fishing, whatever. I truly believe that you have to find something other, not to forget. Certainly not to forget what you've seen or what you've experienced, but to put that energy into something else, because then you will end up in that fetal position. We've seen it. We've seen it go really, really sideways with guys that just, they either drink themselves to death or they just become complete big bloat bags and their health suffers. And I just think you need to find another out and make that work for you. The other part of it is that you must do things like this. You must use your stories, your experiences, your whatever it is you have that you've accumulated over all these years, and share them.
Yeah.
Even if it's the same incident. If you and I had both been in Vegas together, that would have been fun. That would have been a hoot. If we had been together, I'll bet you our stories would have differed immensely.
Ask anybody who was in Mount Pinatubo. Because it's perspective.
Yeah, it is.
And it's how you deal with it, Tim. Tim was probably the premier spokesperson for our department. I mean, really, I got to say is that Tim was oftentimes a front man for speaking. Storytelling comes very easy for you. And so you have a great way of passing on your experiences. Some people write songs. Joe's a musician. Some people poetry. I'm a writer. And so, but we're expressing ourselves. We're expressing ourselves. And that's the healthy thing of not isolating and not using substances to kind of for your escapism.
Except for Advil.
I
have to put a plug in for Advil. I'm telling you, I use those like chiclets every once in a while. There you go, baby.
Vitamin M. So are you doing any teaching right now, Tim?
Well, funny you should ask.
Funny I should ask.
My cousin retired from the fire department in Alameda. He did 30 31 years there, I think. And he's taught CPR for whatever. I mean, I think he's taught CPR and first aid and emergency blood stoppage. And Joe, you would know about all that. He teaches all of that for like the last 30 years. So even when he was a firefighter, he was teaching it. And after all these active shooter incidents, especially, Vegas, really hit home to me that in the school systems and even businesses and private places, these people have a mentality of, if something happens, if we get robbed, if there's an active shooter, they never think about when. And that's where they need to have their mindset is when this happens, this is what I'm going to do. Well, there's no training, right? Well, there actually is training out there. And we found this place and we went through the training to become instructors. And it's called AVERT, AVERT. And basically you go and you teach up to 20 people at a time about active shooter, the difference and what to do. The difference in this program is that it incorporates the emergency blood stoppage and the first aid end of it, which was perfect for us because he's in tune with all that. And so that's what we're doing now, trying to reach out to some of these school districts and businesses and see if they're up on it.
That's good stuff because I know because Tim and I are here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and a lot of our school systems struggle trying to come up with programs, and it's all good until it happens. When it happens to you, you have to have a program in place. So I'll give you some information, or Tim can provide some information how to get a hold of them if you're interested in this. We had a couple of callers, and the 707 wanted to know how Tim and I know each other. We went into that. Tim and I actually worked together probably for 25 years. We get 2 years on me. We went in and out of a lot of the same assignments. Tim worked NARCS, and I think I worked NARCS shortly thereafter you, and worked a lot of cases. We were full functioning units, and Tim was one of our premier verbal judo instructors, and what else did we do together? We did a lot.
Well, with negotiations.
I was on the SWAT side. Tim was an HNT guy a long time. So very, very accomplished career. And we were just proud to have him. And our whole generation's probably gone now. I don't think anybody's there anymore. And so we did really our best for that town. Somebody called. They wanted the 510 know where we're broadcasting from today, and we're broadcasting from inside of a tiki bar. It's the Keel Hall Bar. It's inspired by the pages of my book Typhoon Coast. So when the weather gets better, I'll give you a little tour of this. The 209 wants to know, Tim, what advice would you give somebody wanting to become a cop today?
Think it through. A lot of young people and people that are starting a second career, right? I mean, we both saw people that started in their 30s, late 30s. They just were tired of doing the tech stuff, or they were tired of doing running their own business or whatever. They wanted to do something service oriented, and law enforcement is what they were after. Well, my advice to you would be really research it and think hard about, is shift work something that you can deal with? Because right now, there's a shortage of coppers and all over the country, but in the Bay Area especially, it's tough. So they typically work 12 or 12 and a half hour shifts, which is 3 days a week, and then you have some time off. But you have to add the overtime because they're shorthanded. So you may work 36 hours in 3 days, have a day off, and then the next day you got a 10-hour shift you're going to work. And it's really easy to, you're going to miss birthdays, you're going to miss, your brother's wedding, you're going to miss that stuff. The other thing is, I don't think people think about is the academies are no joke, for the most part, physically and mentally. And, I was the training manager for our department, and you were upstairs then, right?
I was a recruit training officer about that time.
So that's right.
So
that's right.
The academy.
So he was teaching at the academy as an instructor, and we were doing the hiring. So I would go out and visit them, or and we had several that they didn't make it past day two. They weren't used to being yelled at. They physically, they weren't as prepared as they thought they were. Running on the beach the week before the academy starts, that's not going to get it. You have to be, in shape, and mentally, the academics, if you came out of college, or, you're just naturally a smart person, who studies well and can regurgitate onto a test, you'll do fine. But if you're running and jumping and pulling sandbags and doing whatever else you're doing, and then thrown into the classroom to take that test, and then you go to shooting or driving, and then you come back and you take another test, it's a whole different story. You don't have the time to sit there and study and, do what you normally do. So I would say think really, really hard about it, and go on a ride along, not just in the department that maybe you're thinking of joining, or in the area that you're thinking of joining. Find a way to go on a ride along with a patrol officer and see what he or she does on a daily basis. Stay for at least 6 or 8 hours. If you can stay the whole shift, stay the whole shift. But that would be my advice. Really research what it is you think you're getting into.
Amen. Amen. Every generation of cops, and I learned this from my father-in-law, may he rest in peace, he was a cop, and every generation thinks that theirs is the best. And I think ours is the best. I mean, undeniable. But I think that this generation is still trying to define themselves. They're going to look back, and they're going to say, we were pretty darn good at it. And I actually had an editorial in the paper today that kind of dealt with that, but that's for another show. I was thinking about another assignment that we did that you were ahead of me on, was the TAC unit.
And the TAC unit.
And that was great. And it kind of reminded me of Vince, because Vince and I were partners in the TAC unit, and this is a topic for another show, but we were down the street when the Sausage King triple homicide happened. Yeah. We heard all the gunfire and responded out there. So it was, and that was one of our town's most famous homicides. So yeah, man, Tim, I want to thank you. I want to close with a quote. Joe, anything?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the active shooter training. I was looking at some of the FBI stats for this year, and there's been at least 33 mass shootings, what are classified as mass shootings already, and it's only 1 month into the year. What people don't realize is they see it on TV. They think that it's not going to happen to me. It's going to happen it's going to be that other guy that, and one day they're going to have a gun stuck in their face, and, and the rest will be history. I think as a society, and I don't want to get into the whole Second Amendment gun control issue, but it's not going to get any better. It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
We are headed down that slippery slope, and we're on the express train. To get as many people familiarized with mass shooter incidents, what to do when it happens, because it's only a matter of time before it does happen.
Yeah.
And then when it happens, you either act or you don't. And the actions that you may take or don't take might have dire consequences for someone else. So that would be the mindset I would like to impart.
Amen. Amen. Tim, how can people get a hold if they want to reach out to you? I mean, they can get a hold of me through my website, or do you got a communication?
Yeah, it'd be better if they get through your website, okay, and then I'll provide you with everything.
Got it.
And then you can put it out to them.
So if you want to get a hold of Tim, you can do it through my website at markrclifford.com. All my contact information is on there. My phone number is in there, my email. Feel free to reach out. Joe, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of me several ways. They can do the Boneyard 2021 at yahoo.com. That's my show email account. You can find me on Facebook at the Boneyard on Facebook. You can find me at DVY Radio on Facebook, as a matter of fact. So we've got several different approaches there.
Let me give you a shout out to what's new in my writing world. Once again, I'm working on my second book. It's almost done. It should be out in October. If you're interested in my current works, you can go to typhooncoast.com. I'm on the board of the California Writers Club next week. My guest speaker is going to be Kevin Fisher Paulson. He's also a law enforcement guy, but a columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle. Super entertaining guy. You can go to my website and find out more about him, or find me on Facebook, or go to my California Writers Club Mount Diablo branch website. You can find out information on how to register if you're in the Northern California area. Also, you'll find me the following weekend, mid-February. I'll be on staff for San Francisco Writers Convention, which is a great convention. It's in San Francisco, and I'll be one of the people kind of holding everything together. I'll be a floater, so you can see me walking around there. It's been a great show, Tim. Awesome. Thank you very much for coming out. I want to close.
Thanks for having me.
I want to close with a quote and then introduce my next week's guest. This is one of my favorite quotes, Joe, and Tim is probably familiar to you. It's a quote by Rear Admiral Halsey. It goes back to World War II, and it says, "There's no great men. There are only great challenges which ordinary men are forced by circumstance to meet." And I think that in today's culture, where we actually mistake entertainers for heroes, is that heroes come from the people who ran towards the gunfire that day. And so amen to that. And so I mean, I can't say enough. Please, share this story with as many people as you can. Next episode, we're going to be hearing from an Army veteran, a longtime friend of mine, Craig Cooper. Craig was stationed in Germany when the Berlin Wall fell in '89. So this might be good for your radio show, Joe, from Germany.
Hey, you know what? I'm going to throw a shameless plug out there real quick. Speaking of my radio show, join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern for DBY Radio. It's badass music with a mental health kick.
Nice. Joe, where does that go out to internationally?
Oh, my God. Let's see. Matter of fact, I just got the stats in yesterday from Voscast, this company that has the actual station itself. Big hit in Great Britain and also in the Philippines.
Yes. Now, I got a shout out to the Philippines. I wrote a book about you, Typhoon Coast, about my time there during the eruption of Pinatubo. A great epic tale about a treasure hunt. So get out there and buy it. It's a wonderful account of Filipino history. Typhoon Coast. Find it on my website. So a little more about Craig next week. Today, Craig pays it forward in a veteran-run organization, and there are some civilian members there, and they provide disaster relief, and they're pretty busy. And disaster relief is huge. It's called Team Rubicon. There's plenty out there on it. We have a lot of billboards about it now around. You look for. They do some amazing work. He's been with them for several years now. Just a real great guy. He'll be another great guest. And I'm a guy that's been through a lot of natural disasters, from the largest volcanic eruption of last century in a populated area about Mount Pinatubo, Loma Prieta earthquake. I think we've both been in 1989, and deployed out for civil unrest, and also the horrible wildfires that we have here in California. It's seen some communities that were just devastated by flames, helping out there. So he'll bring some really good insight into that. So, Joe, as we always say at the end of our show,
Thrive on!
Thrive on! You thrive on?
Thrive
on! Boom.
Heroes for Hope is a joint Typhoon Coast Whiskey 901 production.